time. All right, something simple to start it with during this conference, the future of work. The digital has taken the economy by storm. The shift is from physical to digital, from bricks to clicks, from manpower to mind power. And actually, we now live in a world where anything is possible. I think that today, the challenges have never been so big. I want to talk about 3 of them before we continue. The first one is that change is on steroids. For the very first time in history, change itself has changed. Whether it's data storage, internet connections, CO2 emissions, number of mobile connections, the iPads being sold, everything is growing at an exponential rate. And this is very different if you compare it at a certain point at which we started Scrum, because we wouldn't tackle everything that had to do with change. And we're entering a next wave. The next wave is going faster and faster. So we need new ways for companies to be more adaptable and change as fast as change itself. That's number 1. The second one is these damn kids today. A couple of years back, let's say 5 to 10 years, it was very simple for a company to, well, let's say, not many companies were able to do something on a global level. A few companies were able to do something on a regional or European level or something like that. But for a company to attack something on a global scale was quite difficult. To launch a new product, to attack a new market, new products and services. But the digital has unleashed everything. There is a boundless world where anything is possible. And also for us, we help startups every day. And every day, multiple startups get started on an existing market, attack new markets for new products. And this is changing the ball game. Companies have to protect their margins, their positions, everything what they do every single day, 24/7, 365 days a year. So innovation and creativity is something that in the past was something that was additional, and now innovation and creativity is something that has to be done all the time by everyone, all the time. Third one, and this is the most important one, and this is the thing that everything is going to change, is the knowledge is out there. Let's say like 5 to 10 years ago, it was quite hard for companies to find anything, anywhere. Today, with globalization, with internet having access to everything, whether it's free or not, the knowledge is out there. And this is changing everything. So we need to create organizations that actually, we need to create organizations that where people bring their gifts of passion and creativity to work every single day. So we have 3. Changes on steroids, those damn kids today, and the knowledge is out there. And every time we meet companies and we ask them something, they never acknowledge any of this. They're just tackling the change as it was 5 to 10 years ago. And knowledge, the most important one with this one, is that the shift is growing from what knowledge do I have today towards how fast can I generate new knowledge. And this is also a very new ball game, for example, when you work in Scrum teams, is how do you tackle this? So at the end, we kind of all know this, but at the end, we need to create organizations that are endless inventive, highly adaptable, and truly inspiring. Inspiring not only for customers or employees, but also for stakeholders and everyone in the organization. Now, we live in a world where anything is possible, and the way we create wealth has changed. It's not about money, power, scale, or something else. It's about imagination. And we need to engage people to come to work, to be excited, to share their passion, and to really love their work. And this is so hard. Sorry. So if you don't hear me, you just raise your voice. I'm not used to walking around with a mic, so I'll do my best. So we need to build organizations where people are energized and excited and love to come to work. It's more than just doing a stand-up in the morning. It's a whole new way of working. It's about being more human. That's something I want to talk about today. We see with companies that behind all this high-tech technology is a lot of low-tech technology. Sticky notes, paper, index cards. It's about people and passion, sharing things and moving stuff around. It's changing the way we work. And this is a question, but it's probably not for you guys, because you all work in organizations that are boundless, capable of doing anything that you want. And you are creative and you are inventive. But just ask this at any company. And I do this quite often. Ask them, give me the top 3 items that really radically change the way your people and the organization work together. And they have no idea. If you ask them about technology or project management or anything else, they have like this long list. But ask them what changed the way they collaborate, they actually have no idea. And I'm actually doubting that they even care. So when you go home, you have to try to figure out for yourself, let's say for the last 3 to 5 years, what have you done that really radically changed the way you collaborate? Try to find the differences. So I want to talk about a little scenario. Let's say you have been asked to facilitate like a very important meeting. You have these, it doesn't matter, customers or stakeholders or employee. You got them in a room for 1 hour and you need to get the most valuable content out. You have to find like this breakthrough product, but you only have 1 hour to do so. What do you do? That's a very tough question. It's not just for getting people in the room. I so often meet organizations that have like this brilliant engineers, and they fail at the point that they have to get together in a meeting room and discuss whether this is a design or it's about what the customer wants, or it doesn't matter. We still lack these collaboration skills. Now, thanks to Scrum, we're able to get together at certain points and try to, well, at least enforce that conversation, but Scrum is just a starting point for the next wave. So we can try the first thing. It's one guy speaking, all the other guys have to listen, he's going over his bullet points, and this one guy is sleeping, otherwise is working on his laptop, and this guy that's like sneaky and working on his mobile phone and nobody notices it. Now you can laugh, but it's funny because it's true. You can even see this. You can even see this with stand-ups where people are during a stand-up like, I'm just going to send this one little SMS. Nobody will notice. That's one possible solution. The other one is a chaos of creativity, where people have been taught to brainstorm and they just go wild. And everyone is talking, everyone is energized, and after 60 minutes when people leave the room, nothing happened. But people feel good because they got everything out. But the fact that the one thing that they lacked was they didn't communicate. And nothing really got done. They were energized, but nothing really got done. So at a certain point, it feels like at one end, it feels like you have nothing. And on the other end, it feels like you have chaos. Nothing really goes the way you want. And these are two sides of the spectrum we are currently at. So, a bit about creativity. For a very long time, creativity has been seen as like this black box. You have like, on the one hand, you have people who like to put things in the box, and then there are the people that live in the box. The people that live in the box are like this almost hippies, and you have these creative desks and walls, and they all have this fancy way of working. But mostly people like to put stuff in the box, and then magic comes out. Now, at a certain point in time, there was this project manager or something else, a guy who read about, we have to be more creative. It's like the guy, you know, everyone knows the guy that in the organization that says, oh, we have to do Scrum, because he read it. So it's the same guy, he said, we have to be creative. So they actually opened the box of Pandora, and he said, wow, everything comes out. It's about new ways of working, and just start. But it doesn't work like that. And the idea that many people have today is that creativity looks something like, and this is the first time I tried to draw a clown. It's more like an angry clown. It's still fun, but people are really scared about it. Scared in a sense that they're even, well, hold back to do anything really important with it. And just ask your manager. They all want you to be more creative, more innovative. And we have these courses on Gamestorming or innovation games or any games that you want or any creativity games. But it's not on the agenda. You have to be more creative, but there are no budgets to do anything about being more creative. So at this point, creativity is more like a scary clown for most people. So what we actually need is to be like this, the guy on the left, like this meeting Jedi guy who can try to find balance in the force between I want business value, but I want creativity. So it's like a constant fight between those two energy levels. So to run a good session, you need energy. But that energy needs to be structured, because if it's not structured, you get something like this. It starts with a small fire, but suddenly a small fire can be unleashed like a forest fire. And actually, they both start out in the same way. It's like with a little spark and a little bit of fuel. But the campfire on the left is very structured. So you structure your energy to get a certain result that you want. If you don't structure that energy, then at some point it can be that your little campfire can cause a very big forest fire. So it's about energy and about structure. And if you talk about energy, then the way we create things, if it has to do with energy, energy always follows the path of the least resistance. So when we design something where there is the least resistance from people, where people just go with the flow because it feels so naturally. So each time we design something, and this is really important, you start with the end result in mind. Is it about creating new ideas? Is it about reaching consensus? Is it about planning? Is it about unraveling complexity? Is it about meeting new customer demands? Whatever you want, to find the right structure and to find the right energy to do stuff, you really need to figure out what you're going to do and what you're going to do with it. So this is a big shift. And to go a bit more on the result side, so whether it's in life or in business, we always try to go from point A to point B, from a very bad team to a very good team, from no customers to a lot of customers. And sometimes this is a straight line, but often this is a non-linear line. We don't always know how to get there, and that's why we build these structures in order to move from point A to point B. Two small examples. The first one is Ford. We all know Ford from the manufacturing area. His problem was he had one car and he wanted lots of cars. That's a business problem. And the way to tackle that is very simple. You define B precisely, you break it down in little pieces. Yes, my drawing skills ended with simple wheels and chairs, so I didn't want to have this very extensive drawing. You break it down, then you design a series of steps. You do it a lot of times, you improve until your cash flow is coming in. That's from going from one car to multiple cars. A very simple design. On the other hand, as the other side of the spectrum, you had Edison. The problem with Edison was he had like this light bulb, but it was really expensive and it was almost not, it was not made for household or something else. It was just too expensive. What he actually wanted was a very cheap light bulb. But he had no idea. There wasn't like a recipe for it. He couldn't break down the initial very expensive light bulb because he would just generate more expensive light bulbs. So the process was different. So actually what he did, he started out, he filled a room with all kinds of materials, he experimented, he learned, and he navigated his way through all these possibilities, and he actually ended up with a cheap light bulb. And that's the difference. And the difference between Ford and Edison is that Ford had a very linear way of working, and Edison was exploring. So it's from having a plan to more having a dream on the right side. It's about predictability versus possibility. So it really depends on your organization what you want. If you just want predictability, you go with a flow, you create a plan. If you want possibility, if you want to take your teams to the next level, then it's more about possibility and ways to create new wealth. So this was a very long introduction to talk about Gamestorming. So Gamestorming, it was, can we do a quick poll? Whoever heard about Gamestorming, raise your hands. Ah, a few people. All right. Anyone ever heard about innovation games? Ah, a few more, a lot more. All right, so innovation games is a bit older, and a while back Dave Gray was like this. He has a design background, and it's really about visual thinking. So he has an area in creativity and innovation. And he decided to gather all these ideas on how to create structures to drive innovation and creativity. And it came out as a book. And one of the subsets, because most of the people now know what innovation games are, a subset in that is innovation games. Innovation games are also little structures to get certain problems done. A speedboat is a structure for a certain problem. So if you haven't bought the book yet, go do so, or just Google Gamestorming, and there's a wonderful website. There are hundreds of games in there, so a lot of stuff to play with. So Gamestorming is a collection of structures for tackling fuzzy goals. Fuzzy goals are goals where you don't know exactly what point B is. Point B was, in Edison's case, a cheap light bulb. For these kinds of problems, we can actually use Gamestorming as a new way of getting things done. All right, let's talk about a game. We have different kinds of games. So in business, we always try to find like this one silver bullet solution and then copy around it throughout the organization or throughout the industry. And in the games sector, they don't do that. They always try to find the unique gameplay, to find a new way to create value, to create energy, to move people towards that goal. So whether you play Tetris or a card game or a board game or a shooting game, all these games are designed for a very specific goal. And that's really important because they're designed for a result to get you from point A to point B in a specific way. Just I have two slides on facts. Why games? They studied this games involve a high level of emotion, and emotion will help you to focus, remember, decide, perform, and learn. And this sounds like the perfect ingredients for any team to get anything done. But if your manager ever asks, well, but games are silly, well, you can say, well, not really, because they recently did a study, and you can now, this is a cluster analysis on the different types of games you have. So we can challenge him if he really knows that there are different types of games. So we have hard, easy, people, and serious fun. You can look at hard fun, any normal video game that you have. You always want to reach the next level, and you have this energy, and you want to get there, but you don't always succeed. But when you do, you have renewed energy for the next level. And when the new version of the game comes out, you buy it again. That's hard fun. Easy fun is what we typically have now, for example, the Foursquare badges. It's about curiosity, wonder, and surprise, so it's differently. People fun is about jokes. If you have your daily Dilbert coming through somewhere, then this is more people fun. The area we work in is serious fun. It's about creating excitement and value. But people mostly see games as being games, so now at least you know there are 4 different types. All right. A game is also a world. And a world has boundaries. Boundaries in time and space. You play a game, if you play Tetris, for example, then it's on your computer, you have this little slot where the blocks drop down, and that's it. You play it from 8 o'clock to 9 o'clock, so everything is bounded. And it's the same when you try to reach for, when you create these meetings or creative sessions or something else. It's always designed with certain boundaries. You design your office, you design your location, you design everything so it fits the purpose. If you have a meeting from 10 to 11, then the whiteboard can be, for example, your boundary. There's always a goal. The goal has to be achievable and actionable. So we actually design games to go from point A to point B, and point B is mostly a fluffy goal, a fuzzy goal, where you don't really know exactly what's going on, but at least it's the direction that you know. Every game has players, rules, and artifacts. Artifacts can be simple things like dices or little points that move around, but every game has rules. If, for example, we look at Monopoly, then we have rules. First of all, we have a board. We have a board in which we play. That's our world. Everything happens around that area. We have rules to create flow, and rules to break flow, stuff to break flow. Like dices can break the flow because it doesn't make you move in a certain direction that you want. So it's about all these little items will help you create different kinds of energy. If you would compare like Monopoly with Gamestorming, then the board can be the whiteboard. Every game, if you know, because many of you know innovation games, every game has its own little rules. You're the players, and you have all these little artifacts, whether it are index cards or post-its or big posters or your flip charts. You can use all this little material to get things done. And the more fun the material is to work with, the more engaged people are. So a game is also a journey because it takes you from point A to point B, but we don't always know what's in there. So it's like this. You've seen this drawing before, but if you remember one thing from this session, that is just, if you remember this drawing, then I'll be happy. You always go from point A to point B in some way. It's a journey. You start with a simple question, and then you navigate your way through this complexity area. You have no really a good or bad idea how you're going to get there, but it's about learning. It's about finding a way to navigate through there. And these are all things to keep in mind for the next time when you do a creative session, or you're just talking with people, or you're just innovating, is that it's not just about being creative, it's about all these little steps that you have to keep in mind, because they change the way people work. And they work because fuzzy goals, they often have the power to move people from point A to point B, because there's a lot of emotion, but you have to find ways to really empower that emotion again. And one of the characteristics is like sensory. What we mean with that is that if you use tangible objects and people can move things around, there is a lot of energy. And it looks like the cloud is raining on the people, but it's information going up in the cloud, so the other way around. And the moment you have these objects that you're sharing, these tangible objects, people moving things around, people standing and just doing stuff, makes like this shared vision of what you want. And you can actually get a lot of work done. It's one of the ways in which you move people towards the same goal. It's about being emotional, because there's so much energy, but you have to structure that energy. And if you don't structure that energy, you'll have like this little campfire that becomes a forest fire. So if you find a goal, like one of the most famous one is putting a man on the moon, everyone knows what this means. Everyone can imagine that. It's not a very precise point in time, but we can imagine the man being put on the moon. How he gets there, that's another problem. But people can just imagine that. And making it emotional, if you make point B emotional, that people care about, then they're engaged. But you don't want to lose that energy, so you have to make it also progressive. If you have like a 60-minute session and you just be creative for 60 minutes, then people are tired and exhausted when they come to an end. We don't want that. You start with simple questions and you design your games with different little games, different little structures to move people towards this very uncertain and very awkward area of creativity. So we do this little sessions from 5 to 10 minutes, and you constantly try something new. But at every point, you renew that energy. I think you can compare it best for example, when you play the Tetris game. It's not like an endless flow of blocks coming down. At some point, you can go to the next level. It's exactly the same thing. When you go to the next level, you have renewed energy. And that's all that it takes. If Tetris was an endless game, just blocks, 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 then people would not keep playing it, because it's too exhausting. You don't ever get anywhere. Did anyone ever heard of the golden circle? Raise your hand if you do. A few people. This is like a very simple and new model that has been around recently. And it's a way to explain people that when you start with why, people are engaged. So when you start with a fuzzy goal, like putting a man on the moon, because we need to find a way for a civilization to move out of this just planet Earth, then people are engaged and people are finding ways to do this. And the circle consists out of 3 areas. It's why, how, what. And the simple example is that if you compare Dell versus Apple, with Dell, they start with from outside in. They say, we sell computers. Why? Because they want to make money. On the other hand, you have Apple, and they start from the inside out, where they actually say, we are different. That's why we do it. We see things differently. How? Because we start with design. We start with design because we want this very sleek design. People should love our product. And what do? Oh yes, we build computers. And that's a big shift for companies from just selling computers to being differently. And you have to think about when you design this area of creativity that it's not about just simple facts, it's all about emotion and energy, but structuring that energy. It's also a play. Whether it's a movie or a theater play, everything has a beginning, a middle, and an end. So when we design games for companies or for internal meetings or whatever, they always have like this basic shape. It's like a triangle, a square and a triangle. You have the players and the rules on one side and the artifacts, and on the right side you have some outcome. That's point B, the fuzzy goal. You always start with opening. This is the most important one. This is the blue sky thinking. Everything is possible. You set the themes, you create ideas, but there's no criticism. How many times did we see that when people come in the room, and even when they use this post-its and they create one post-it and they hang it on the wall, you have like 4 people going, no, you can't do that. And chances are that next time this guy will not put on another post-it. Or the next guy will just go like, oh, I can't do that. Because otherwise he will get some criticism. So you create structures, you take games, you create an environment in which anything is possible. You start with ideas. The second one is about exploring. It's about emergent design. It's about exploring, it's about examining, experimenting. You take all these ideas you have from the first phase, and then you start to look for patterns, for new analogies. You start to look at things, old things in new ways, new things in old ways. You try to figure out how to move and get more information about these items. And this is mostly the hardest one. You actually have to close. And we see people struggling with this because it's very easy to generate ideas. It's very easy to get very deep in certain items. But then you have like this still 10, 20 items from which you have to choose 1 or 2 to actually make a business case out or actually get something done at the end. So this is a time for criticism. This is a time for, well, discussion, for taking action. So when you design this, always design different kinds of games, different kinds of structures for opening, exploring, and closing. So for example, for those who know the innovation games, you can start with like doing a product box for generating ideas, followed by remember the future for having a roadmap, and then like a speedboat at the end to see what's holding you back for doing a next thing. But you have to combine and recombine different kinds of games. And when you do this, you're not just a player, you're also a creator of games. And when you're a creator of games, you have to try to navigate people throughout this area. So you design more or less upfront how you want to help people navigate through this world of complexity. But you don't want to do it too strictly. So you have this, if you take the book on Gamestorming, you have this like over 100 games from which you can choose. And depending on how the situation is going, you either move to left, to right, you abandon ideas or not. So when we look at this a bit more in practice, so when we open the first drawing on the top, when we open, we have all these ideas. Then in the middle, we use other techniques to gather all these ideas, to go deeper, to examine, to bring in new stuff. to experiment with that. And this can be a process of multiple structures, multiple games, and each time you move from open to explorer or from circle to circle, the thing you're actually doing is renewing this energy. One of the reasons you use different kinds of games is that it renews the energy. And this can be like, it only can take 5 or 10 minutes, or you can do a game of 60 minutes, it doesn't matter. But bring in variation, that's very important. The drawing below is a more complex one, where you start out with the first area, where you have the whole group doing the open, explore, and close phase, where after the group is being divided in multiple smaller groups who examine again different items, and at the end of that examination, bring those ideas together and start a whole new session. And this is really interesting when you can play these games with hundreds of clients, and you bring these clients together and you just take them apart again for new ideas. So you don't have to play everything with everyone all the time. And this is actually very fun. So that the last drawing is actually very fun when you do this with customers. Because in the middle, you just divide the group in two groups, and they have their little own ecosystem. And they will come up with their own ideas, and at the end, we just combine them again and start all over to see if there is like a convergence, and to see if you can make things done. So the future is all about, and you'll see this if you buy the book or go online, it's all about games like Plus Delta, Affinity Mapping, 4Cs, Paint Game Maps, 5 Whys, Speedboats, Body Storming, Product Box, and I think there are over 300 games currently. All things you can play. So what's Gamestorming? Gamestorming is like this mashup, a mashup of game mechanics, the open explore games, open explore and close, and principles, game principles. You should really look into this last area, because you have like a dozen very small techniques, like fire starting, improvisation, trying something new, all these little kinds of techniques that will help you to re-energize and to find better ways to create that energy to move and motivate people. Gamestorming is a practice of people, paper, and passion. It's nothing more than that. And we're all in this, we're all Scrum people, so using Post-its and pens would be very familiar. So it's a nice follow-up. So the future of work is not just about dull routines. It's not just about stand-ups. It's not just about doing sprint planning. It's also not about some people doing creativity. It's not about some change. It's about being more human. And this is really important, but also very difficult, because no one ever educated this. So we have either a choice. You can either have game over, or you have game on. That's it. Thank you.